Greetings and welcome, you beautiful people. You hold on one moment. Let me bump up the volume here. There we go. Much better, much better. How you all doing? Welcome in. My name is Michael. I'm the DAG Gamer, and welcome to DAG Reads, where I read. It's on the title. It's right there. I'm gonna be reading. It's so good to see you guys. As you guys know, DAG Reads is on a bit of a hiatus at the moment because, like, you know, with Gen Con coming up and with all my plans and all the stuff that's happening, you know, it's just one of those things that I was like, oh, well, you know, I don't really have time to, like, keep up with the reading and get a good night's sleep and all this other stuff, so we put it on hiatus. But this week I've had so many games that I've had to, like, reshuffle and move around, so I was kind of like, you know what, I'm kind of angsty. I'm like I really want to run something and do stuff. So yeah, jumping with energy for the Curse of the Crimson Throne. Oh yeah, exactly. And all my games. So yeah, you know, there we go. So good to see so many cool people in chat. I can see Schooly Eye, Marcus, Killer Koala. Good to see you, mate. Centauri. You know, good to see so many cool, wonderful, hip-hopping and people chilling in chat. And thank you, Centauri, for the sub, you beautiful angel, you. Alright, so, yeah, what's the dealio? What are we doing? So, I was thinking about what book to read, because we started reading some of the Through the Breach stuff and things, and that's fine, you know, it was a lot of fun, but I managed to dig up a book that I hadn't read since, again, I was in high school. And this book is by Paul Jennings and Maurice Gleesman, who are both, like, Australian authors who wrote this, like, they were just these twisted minds from back in, like, the 90s and the early 2000s. And some of the books that they wrote were just, they were just mental. And so I remember I bought this book and the sequel to it, which we'll read at some point as well, which is Deadly. Well, it's not really a sequel. It's more just, like, in the same spirit of, should I say. And so we're going to read that for today. To kind of give an insight into, like, you know, just some of the weird stuff that's out there in Australian creative writing space. Also, we're streaming to try and raise awareness and things for, of course, none other than the Crit Awards, as you guys know. The Crit Awards, today is the last day of voting. So if you haven't done so already, I am up for Pathfinder GM of the Year, and my lovely co-stars over at Careful Cantrip and myself are up for 2 awards, the Best Overlay and Best Villain. So if you haven't done so already, consider, you know, just going over, having a check out of, like, the people that are up for the award, and if you want to, vote for DAG. You know, that's basically it. Hey, welcome in, Epic Realms. Good to see you. Hope you're having a wonderful time zone. Hey, thank you, Killer Koala. That's freaking spectacular. Now, before we begin, a couple little bits of ASMR, because, you know, I can. First of all, I'm gonna eat a senbei, because I'm actually really nervous. I've had a very big week, and I've just found that I've, like, I don't know, just been, my nerves have shot this week, and, you know, like, nothing too bad, nothing stressful or anything like that, but, you know, like, I've been dieting a little bit, you know, because of my trip to America, because, you know, look, hey, we all have, you know, body image, you know, things that we kind of go through here and there, and for me, you know, I kind of have a lot of, like, feelings about how I look and how I appear. We won't go into them, you know, but, you know, like, been working hard at those things and you know, slaying those bugbears that I know we all have, so this is, my replacement snack. It's basically just, like, kind of, like, almost like rice cake, as it were, so. Killer Koala, are you going to be at the Crit Awards ceremony? Yes. I will be there for the first hour or so, because me and a bunch of other content creators, we have, like, panels on during the ceremony, but not necessarily at the start. So we're hoping that our awards get called out early on, so we can, you know, accept the award, you know, give like a high five, because I don't imagine there's going to be much time for speeches, and then, like, whew, straight out. But yeah, it should be amazing. American portions are massive compared to other countries. Well, I mean, okay, look, so a senbei is like this big. That's how big, you know, senbei is. It broke in my packet, so I'm kind of like, you know, doing that. Now, I'm sure that some of you have also have also noticed that I've started cutting down on some Coke. So I have also been reducing my sugar. So I've got my sparkling water here. So another little bit of ASMR before we get ready is, you ready? There it is. Okay. Why do I drink sparkling water? Because I used to drink so much Coke, the fizziness just helps me kind of get rid of that kind of addictive trait of I need to have Coca-Cola, I need to have that sugar. So the sparkling bit helps with that. Doesn't taste the best, but feels good. Okay. What's happening with my computer? Caught Rob's Tech Goblins? Oh my god, don't even get me started. I've had a ton of streams which have just started and stopped in the middle for no reason. I've had situations where I've been just super slow and super laggy, and the buffering time's just awful. So yeah, it's just a lot of stuff because my computer's over 10 years old now, and they don't make parts for it anymore, so I can't replace my RAM, I can't replace my graphics card. I basically have to replace the motherboard and all of the stuff that's in it, or from the ground up. So yeah, it's just kind of at that point, I just need to buckle it down. And guys, hey, again, we don't ask for donations on our read streams. These are just because I love spending time with you, getting a chance to talk and catch up, find out about you guys, and enjoy a good book. But if you do feel like donating, there are no rewards, unfortunately, but it's a great way for you to earn channel points for the reward games. And if you want to donate, all proceeds currently are going towards helping fix my computer. And maybe a teeny bit towards any extra expenses I might have at Gen Con, just as kind of a little buffer. But you guys know me. I hate asking for money. I hate asking for that sort of stuff. I just I'm grateful for people. And I want to be honest about every single cent that comes through my channel. I don't use it to go out night clubbing or buy a freaking luxury car. Everything is basically back at the channel, or trying to whenever I hit those big streaks of hey, my mortgage is just gone way over my paycheck. Little things like those survival things. That's where it's all going. So please and thank you in advance for anyone who does. But again, don't feel pressure. This is just a nice, cool, chill stream. There is no reward. I disagree. Watching you is the reward. Stop it. Myth, you flirt, you. All right. So, what can I tell you about this book? Honestly, nothing. All I remember is that there was a rotten apple doll. So it's this kind of almost toy doll that had a desiccated apple for a head. And that was all I remember about this book. It was weird. It was terrifying. It is a borderline horror story, but it's more of a young adult horror story. So, so that's it. We're going to be doing this. And also, actually, can I try this? I want to try this with you guys. Let me know if this sounds weird. If I use this voice, does it sound female? Let me try this. So if I were to do a voice reading using this voice, is this something that is going to be annoying, or is it going to be something that's worthwhile? What do you think? Let me know. Yes or no? If nothing's happened, also let me know, because that just makes me seem stupid. Though I am a little stupid, but we don't talk about that. What do we say? Yes? No? Perhaps? Any thoughts? Nothing has happened. Okay, good. Fantastic. Wonderful. Alright, hold on. Let me see if I can fix it. Ba-da-da-da. Okay. There's that, there's that, there's that. Okay. Testing, testing. Alright. Testing, testing. Oh, what the hell? Okay. Alright, bear with me. Bear with me. Let me just quickly reset the program, because that might be it. Okay. Because, okay, so the reason
had to ask my mind when she felt on because that would make sense, and now it's working, I think. Okay. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, there we go. How's it going? Okay. Yo, I think that's all working. Guys, there's the voice timer. Let me have a look. Hello? Okay. Alright, so this now, does this voice sound different? Does this sound like... And that is not a DAG voice, okay. Is this an annoying voice, is a question. Is this a voice that you would like to give me read in? Well, with 1 for yes, 2 for no. And I'm happy to read in my own voice. I don't need a voice thing. 1 for female DAG yes, 2 for female DAG no. Semi-female? That's weird. Yeah, it does sound semi-female. That's because I don't have female tones. Maybe if I'm reading. No? Okay.
Alright, no problem. In which case, we will bypass it. We will go with a no. Because that's, you know, I mean, it's fine. Okay, so. This is from Chapter 1. Puffin Books Wicked. Something very weird is oh wait, sorry, let me try this again. Wicked, Chapter 1, Book 1, by Paul Jennings and Morris Glisman. Something very weird is happening to Dawn and Rory, and it's not just their new stepfamily. Slurping slobberers want to suck out their bones. Strange steel sheep want to smash them to pieces. Cruel killers, creepers, want to squeeze the life out of them. Their parents can't help them. Their Gramps wants to, but he's a bit off the planet. In this adventure, Dawn and Rory are on their own. It's wild, it's wacky, it's wicked. All right. Book 1, The Slobberers. And I'll show you the artwork for that. That one is The Slobberers. I also do love the art here. Kind of reminds me of Oddworld. Okay. Chapter 1. They all reckon I'm a worm. A grub. A monster. I could tell from their faces as I ran out of the church, and from where they were saying, "You're a wicked girl!" hissed Mr. Kinloch from the Wool Growlers Association. I didn't blame him. I'd probably think the same if I saw a kid do what I'd just done. Ruin her own dad's wedding. Leave a church in an uproar and the bride in tears and a minister in shock. I wish Dad had listened all those times I tried to talk to him. But parents don't listen when love's made them dopey. You just have to go along with their mad plans and hope that everyone doesn't end up in the poo. That's what I was telling myself this Arvo in the church, while Mrs. Conti from the cake shop was playing Here Comes the Bride on the organ. It'll be okay, I said in my head as Dad and Eileen stepped up to the altar. We can get through this. Dad's a really good dad, even though his brain is turned to confetti and Eileen's, well, she's not a bad person, even though she does dribble a bit when she loses her temper. We'll be right. I wanted to believe it heaps, but it was no good. My neck was hurting. I always get neck tension when I'm trying to lie to myself. I thought a curried egg sandwich might help. I reached for one next to me on the pew, and I pinched one from the caterers when we dropped into the scout hall on the way to the church to check that glitter ball had arrived at the reception. I hoped the bread hadn't gone too hard in the heat. Rev Arnott's voice was pretty quiet, and I didn't want to disrupt the ceremony with crunching. I lifted the sandwich to my mouth, and I froze. There was a slug sitting on the bread, looking at me. Ugh. It was more of a worm than a slug. Slimy, sort of veiny. I'd never seen one like it before, and Dad's a shearer, so I've seen lots. You wouldn't believe some of the things that crawled out of a sheep's bottom. I glared at it and went to knock it off, and that's when I saw Rory glaring at me. You'd think grown adults would know better than to put two kids who hate each other side by side on the same pew, Even love-fuddled adults with new shoes are hurting them. Even love-fuddled adults with new shoes that are hurting them a bit should know better than that. But Dad and Eileen were determined. "She's your stepsister," Eileen had hissed to Rory when we got to the church. "Sit next to her." "Oh, Mum," Rory had moaned. Dad had taken me to one side and given me a pep talk. "Dawn," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "I know it's not easy, but we all feel more comfortable with each other once..." why is he becoming Alan? Hold on. "Dawn, I know it's not easy. We'll feel a bit more comfortable with each other once we're living together and getting to know each other better." I opened my mouth to remind Dad that Rory and me have known each other for over 8 years, and he's hated my guts for 5. I've been going off at him in a big way for at least 4.5. Then Mrs. Conti deafened us with the organ as the wedding started. 2 minutes later, Rory was grabbing my sandwich. "That's mine," I whispered furiously. "Hands off!" We struggled over the sandwich. "The worm's mine," grunted Rory. He let go of the sandwich and grabbed the worm. I chewed my sandwich angrily. How's anyone meant to like a person who keeps worms as pets? Specifically when that person's a year older than you and is meant to be setting a good example. Rory put the worm into a tin. I stared. Inside the tin was a little troll that Rory takes everywhere with him. The one with the wooden body and a dried apple for a head. I tried not to make jokes about it because sorry. Whew. I try not to make jokes about it because his dad sent it to him, and it's the only present he's had from his dad for ages. The troll's shriveled up apple head had been dried and dead, but now it was alive with worms. It was slobbering all over it and wriggling into the mouth and writhing out the eyes. It was worse than anything I'd ever seen on a sheep, even in nightmares. I looked at Rory. He wasn't gagging or looking revolted or anything. He was just staring at the worms, fascinated. Then I saw something even more horrible. The tin. It was my tin. My Milo tin, the one that Mum had given me to keep pencils in. I couldn't believe it. Rory had taken it from my room without asking. The last thing Mum gave me before she died. And he'd put slimy, slobbery, revolting worms in it. I felt rage uncoiling inside me, hot tears stinging. In the distance, Reverend Arnott was saying stuff about how if anyone had a reason why these two people should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. Before I knew it, I was on my feet. I shouted. I heard the pews creak as everyone stiffened. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. "We all hate each other," I said. My heart was pounding in my ears. My dad's mouth was wider than a sheep's chute. "Not Dad and Eileen," I continued, "because they got sex. But the rest of us..." Eileen's face was crumpling, and Reverend Arnott was clinging to the altar. I plowed on through. "We pretend to like each other, but we don't. You should see Rory go off when I catch him using Dad's razors to scrape the fluff off his socks. You should see Dad when Rory has had a nightmare and gets into bed with Eileen. You should see Eileen when I make friendly jokes about her bottom exercises." "Thank you, Dawn," croaked the Reverend. "Why don't we finish the ceremony and a family talk afterwards?" I turned to appeal to the guests. Rows of open mouths and big eyes. I pointed at Rory. "I try to be friendly with him. He lets his rat poo in my underwear drawer." "I do not," shouted Rory. "It was a mouse." "Dawn!" roared Dad, storming towards me. "Sit down." "Second marriages never work," I yelled, "specifically when she's more educated than he is, and her son sneaks into his daughter's room and takes precious things." I grabbed my Milo tin, but Rory hung on, and the tin spun out of our hands, crashing onto the tiles. The apple head bounced across the floor, worms slithering everywhere. I turned and ran out of the church. Dad followed for a bit, shouting, but then gave up. I wasn't surprised. Eileen's been more important to him than I have for about a year now. I suppose I was pretty dopey coming here to the old bus. Sorry. I suppose I was pretty dopey coming here to the old bus, because Dad knows where I always come when I want to be close to Mum. When the ceremony was over, he'll know where to find me. In fact, I can hear someone crashing through the bushes now. Whoever it is, I'm history. If it's Dad, he'll kill me for ruining the wedding, and if it's Reverend Arnott to tell me I'm forgiven, I've still got to live with the worm boy. So either way, my life is over. End of chapter 1. So, yeah, so straight away launched into, you know, like kind of family dramas and things like that. With that little element of grossness, like the thing with the worms and the tin and the little apple-headed troll doll. These were kind of like very, very big staples of Paul Jennings' work. Like if you ever watched Round the Twist as a TV show way back when, or things like that, a lot of the stuff that they use in that, a lot of the short stories were Paul Jennings and Morris Glisman working on very, very twisted and not grotesque, but just gross stuff that was very common around that era. So yeah, as soon as I'm into this, I'm like right back to being a kid in high school, like, or, you know, like reading these books and just like, you know, getting that enjoyment of like the ick and the gross and the yuck, you know. Hey, Seagod, welcome in, buddy. How are you? I hope you're having a wonderful time of day, whatever time it happens to be. So yeah. Now, when we do get between chapters, and the chapters will fly very, very quickly, because again, this is definitely a short novel, the same way that that they would be, you know, back in the day. So we're gonna fly through chapters. Like, we'll definitely get through book 1 easily today. But if you have any questions, or if you want to elaborate on things, or muse on theories and the like, let me know and we'll do so. The green slimes and such, the fart boxes, yeah, all those sort of things, you know. They even had like stink bombs as well, like little like silver packets you squeeze through and then they popped, and they just make this horrible smell, you know. Lots of stuff from back in the gross age of childhood enjoyment. I also remember there used to be this candy thing that you used to have as a kid, and you used to be able to make like gummy worms, but then you'd cover them in dirt, so you'd have to dig them out of the dirt and then eat the worms with all the like chocolate powder on it. And then you had like these little heads that you would fill with like syringes with jelly. You'd stick them in the head and then you'd squirt them and they'd come out of their eyes and their nose and stuff. Yeah, lots of really kind of, I don't know, I can't even describe it, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, it was everywhere. Like, just things were like, as a kid growing up, there were just some things that were just marketed to be just absolutely gross, and people loved it. Oh, the eye gums, yeah, eye gummies. Oh my god, yeah, I do remember them too. Like literally like the same way you'd eat gummy bears, you'd eat handfuls of these eyeballs, and they were the same gummy, but it was like it wasn't clear. It was just like solid white with, like, you know, again, just the coloration of the eyes, and you eat them, and they, yeah, it was a whole thing. Yeah, the Mad Scientist Kit. Yeah, that's the one. I mean, even board games. I remember there was a game called Grape Escape, and if you ever look for it, right, it basically, you play as like these little Play-Doh grapes, and you make your way moving around this board, and there were like traps on the board, and you had to chop, cut, squish, murder these little figurines of these like tiny little grapes, which always reminded me of the Ribena grapes. And so it was extra fucked up because you'd always see the Ribena ads on TV, and it was like, yes, buy Ribena, and look at all these happy little grape things as they jump into the bottle of refreshing Ribena. And then meanwhile you're playing the game going, yeah, die Ribena. You know, I don't know. Look, I had a weird childhood apparently. I'm realizing this as nostalgia's picking up. Oh, the Ecto Cooler drinks, yeah. Oh man, I mean, yeah, Ghostbusters, whole other thing, yeah. Like literally anything from the Ghostbusters line. Oh my god, one last thing. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were also super gross. I remember I used to have the Turtle Van, and the Turtle Van used to have a catapult on the back of it that you could attach. And it was like this, it was like a bucket that you could fill with like this green slime, this sticky thing, and you would launch it at your friends. It would launch this glob of chemical slime at someone. And yeah. Weird times. But yeah, if you ever want to see weird stuff, right, I'll type this in chat. Alright, if you ever want to see some weird stuff, look up a show called Liftoff. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we're all showing our ages here. We are. I had someone turn to me the other day and said, "You are not 37." I'm like, "Yeah, I am. You know, I've been that way, you know, since the start of my birthday, you know, like last year. It's just, and the stains are forever. Oh man, yeah. Tell me about it. Still haven't recovered a ton of stuff that were destroyed in that era. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you one thing. I do have something that I've had since I was born, and it's actually in amazing quality. Right? And I brought it out last. I don't know why I brought it out last like week. I think the last stream I did for DAG Reads, but I still have it here. This is my Alf doll. Now, Alf is not exactly what you'd call a you know, like a cute, cuddly mascot, because for those of you who don't remember Alf lore, Alf was a person from the planet Melmac, and he came in as a refugee to this planet. And a thing I think a lot of people forget about Alf is Alf eats cats. Yep. Legitimately, his diet subsists off cats. And you think about that today and you're like, you are so cute. Look at this. This is a cute little guy. He eats what? Sorry? And this is for children. This is for children. Children, look. You're gonna play with your Alf doll. Torment your small animal. So yeah, there you go. He was always trying to eat cats. And, you know, one of my favorite lines is, oh, hang on, let me pull this up. I think I know the line. It was, he's sitting there in like a tuxedo and he's looking at the cat. Alf, be nice to the cat. I am being nice. You know, hey, won't you sit down, have some wine. It'll slow your reflexes. Gordon Shumsky. Yeah, that was his name. Gordon Shumsky was his real thing, because Alf was kind of racist if you really think about it. Artificial life form is the true. Oh, sorry, alien life form is the ALF acronym. So yeah, there you go. Before immigration became a subset in plots. Also, hi Silver Fox and Voltaria. Good to see you. Didn't have an Alf plushie. I had a Mogwai one. Mogwai. I don't know the Mogwai one. I'll Google it afterwards. But yeah. Anyway, let's get to chapter 2. For those of you who don't know, reading Wicked, which is a great book. Right now, we've had Dawn, our main character, well, one of our two main characters, ruin their father's wedding to the new stepmother, because the stepmother's son, Rory, who's the other protagonist, had a little tin that belonged to Dawn's mother. It was the last thing Dawn's mother gave her, and filled it with worms that were slowly devouring a troll doll with an apple head kind of thing. And after a scuffle, they dropped the worms and stuff on the ground. It was all gross and stuff, and yep, there we go. Chapter 2, we now go to Rory's perspective. The fluffy thing from Gremlins was Gizmo. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Oh, okay. Right. I know what you're talking about now. I couldn't remember they were called Mogwai. Okay. Big bad Dawn. Everything about her. Big muscles, big head, big mouth. Worst of all, she's my sister. Well, stepsister to be exact. It's not the same. A real sister wouldn't have made such a fuss in the church over a Milo tin. A real sister wouldn't have nearly let my grubs escape. A real sister wouldn't have... What the heck? I knew where she was hiding. Everyone from the wedding was looking for her. Fancy standing up in the church and objecting to the marriage. What a hoot. I have to give her full marks for that. I wish I'd thought of it myself. I didn't want my mum to marry Jack any more than she did. The bus. And that's where she'd be. That was her hideout. I tucked the Milo tin under one arm and walked to the side of the creek for a while. Then I took the shortcut through the dead cow clearing, and I reached the fence to the wrecker's yard and peered in. And there it was, a rusting hulk right in the middle of the yard. Broken windows, grass sprouting out of the petrol cap. Not a speck of paint left. A tree growing right through the bonnet, and the whole thing leaning drunkly to one side. The bus had carried its last passenger. That was one thing for sure. Last passenger. What was I thinking about? I was the last passenger. I had my crook leg to remind me of that. I climbed through Dawn's secret hole in the bent iron fence. "I know you're there, Dawn," I said under my breath. Inside the yard, I crept past the remains of a '68 Ford and round a pile of dented hubcaps. I didn't want Dawn to hear me, so I picked my way forward carefully. I reached the bus and hopped in quietly onto the first step, and stopped. I didn't want to go in. I'd been on that bus when it crashed. A terrible crash that I still couldn't remember anything about, but there was no time for that now. "Gotcha!" I jumped up next to the 2 broken steps to the back of the bus. Dawn was sitting in the driver's seat with tears in her eyes. "You!" she spat out. "Worm boy, where's your rotten apple man?" She shouldn't have said that. Like I was feeling a bit sorry for her, sitting in the very seat where her mother had drowned. But when she rubbished my apple man, I could feel my face burning. "My dad gave me that apple man," I yelled. "Don't you—" She wouldn't even let me finish. Your dad! Don't give me that! Where is he then? What sort of dad goes off and never writes? Never sends a present? Not even a Christmas card? My dad gives you all the stuff. My dad gives you stuff all the time. The only thing you've ever got from yours is a rotten apple." I ran down the aisle between the sagging seats and put my face up close to Dawn's. I shouldn't have said what I did. Not when she was sitting right where it happened. But I was really mad. "What about your mum?" I yelled. "She wanted to get away from you so bad that she drove the bus off the cliff and into the river and drowned. Nearly killed me too." Dawn just about exploded. I had really pressed the right buttons. She jumped out of her seat and shoved me onto the floor. The Milo tin rolled down the aisle, and the lid popped off. My little apple man spilled out and lay there like a wizened corpse. Dawn sat in my chest and pinned my arms to the ground with her knees. I couldn't move. I could hardly breathe. She was much stronger than me, and she knew it. "I'm gonna get your rotten apple man," she said, "and I'm gonna flush it down the dunny." I squirmed and heaved, but I just couldn't move her. If she wanted to, she could do whatever she liked. She knew that if she ran off with him, I'd never catch her. She was too fast, and it'd be the last I'd see of my apple man. It's amazing how they make those little apple faces. They get an extra big apple and let it slowly shrivel up, so it's all wrinkly and dry. And then they sew it so that it has little eyes, a mouth, and a chin. And make a wooden body, then, hey presto, a great little troll with an ugly face. "Don't touch it!" I screamed. "I'll kill you!" I bucked like a horse, but as she pressed down harder with her knees. "It's got worms," she said. "Horrible little slobberers." I knew that. I twisted my head sideways and looked at them. I was a bit worried when I first saw them. What if they ate the whole apple head off the doll? Dad would be sad if his present got ruined. The funny thing, though, is the apple man never changed. The slobberers must have eaten something, but what? They couldn't have been eating the apple, or there'd be none left. My arms started to tingle with pins and needles. Dawn's knees were knobbly. "Give in, worm boy," she said. "Never," I said. So we stayed there for a while on the floor of the bus. I stared up into her ugly mug and she glared down into mine. I decided not to look at her, so I fixed my eyes on a seat where the skeleton of a dead goat sat like a ghostly passenger. How the heck did that even get in here? It must have wandered in and died. The image of the skeleton sort of locked in my head. Suddenly Dawn gave a scream and jumped up. She was looking down the aisle at the slobberers. Typical girl. Tough as an ox, but scared of a few little grubs. Then I looked a bit more closely. Oh no. I scrambled up and backed off. The skin of the apple man had begun to boil. A huge grub erupted from a wrinkled scar on the apple man's face as it wormed itself out, wriggling, wriggling, wriggling. Tiny veins and purple blood, little pinpricks of glowing eyes and wet fangs, and 3 or 4 slobberers sucking tongues coming out of its mouth. I hadn't seen a slobberer like this before. Maybe they were changing. It crawled towards us, followed by another, and another. Each one the same. It was weird. They slimed out of the apple man's eyes, ears, and hair, and soon there were 20 or 30. They advanced towards us like a line of angry little snakes. I'm out of here, shrieked Dawn. Suddenly the slobberers stopped. They reared up as one and seemed to look out. They turned and slithered in panic towards the door. Hey, I yelled. Come back here, she won't hurt you. It seems funny to say this, but I didn't want to lose them. Since they had been living in the Apple Man, I had come to like them, even though they were pretty yucky. They were a bit like tenants renting a house. They lived in the Apple Man. They didn't really do any harm to him, and no one else had anything like them. So I grabbed the Apple Man and ran out the bus. The slobberers were lined up some distance away, staring at the bus, and seemed to make a frightening slurping noise. Their little tongues flickered in and out. Weird. It wasn't Dawn that we're frightened of. She had run out and was already climbing through the hole in the fence, heading for home as quick as her legs can take her. What a chicken. No, the slobberers weren't scared of Dawn. It was something to do with the bus. To be honest, I thought it was a bit spooky myself. I walked up close to them and put the Apple Man down on the ground. Come on, guys, I said. Come on home. Come home to Daddy. In a flash, they streaked across the ground towards the Apple Man. They wormed, wiggled, and fought each other in their hurry to get back inside. There was a bit of a traffic jam at the nostril. After a few seconds, they were gone. Everything was back to normal. For now, at least. I picked up my Apple Man and headed back into the bus, where inside I put them back in the Milo tin. No point taking risks. I couldn't have the chance that my little slobberers might escape again. Things were weird enough already. I jumped out of the bus and walked back to the hole in the fence. I was glad to be leaving. The slobberers didn't like that bus, and neither did I. End of the second chapter. Okay, so yeah, that was rude. That was harsh. Kids can be so cruel, you know. And definitely felt that, you know, like between the two of them. I mean, I get it, but you know, also that's very sad. You learned a little bit about like why the family was torn apart. Seems that they both have that in common. They were torn apart by the bus accident, killed mother, also maimed Rory. So a lot of complex feelings, you know. But that's okay, you know, because families are all about complex feelings. I get that. Whew. Yeah. How you guys finding the book so far? You liking it? You think it's an interesting tale? I'm gonna eat a bit of my senbei. They both carry baggage on the bus. Yes, 100%. I mean, I've never suffered a loss like that, you know, like of someone like super close to me like that. So I can't imagine what Dawn was going through. You know, sitting in the exact place where she lost her mom, you know? Being kind of surrounded by all of that. I don't know if I could do it. I mean, I guess in a way I do, because obviously, as many of you know, last year I lost my studio cat, and I'm still in the studio, so I guess there is that in a way. But I don't know. I don't know if being in the studio is where I would go to like feel better because of that. You know what I mean? That's more, you know, where I'm angling at. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Is that a... What is that? Is that a moon? Or is that a plate? Because I'm eating my senbei. Oh, thanks, Seagod. I appreciate you. It's supposed to be a hug. There's a glitch somewhere. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate everyone. Everyone is awesome. Everyone is awesome. Everyone is cool when they join my chat. Okay. So, chapter 3. Back to Dawn's perspective. Before the wedding, I'd been scared 3 times in my life. Really scared. The sort of scared where people sit you down, give you hot drinks, and say, take deep breaths. Take deep breaths, Dawn, and peek to see if you'll wet your pants. Let me try that again. The sort of scared where people sit you down, give you hot drinks, and say, take deep breaths, Dawn, and peek to see if you wet your pants. The first time when I saw Dad crying, just before he told me Mum had died. The second was when I was at Mum's funeral, when I heard Mrs. Lecter from the newsagents whispering to Mr. Gleason, the librarian, whispering that Mum had killed herself on purpose. The third was when Gramps told me that a rotting beam at the Wilsons' place had crushed a shearer, and I thought he had meant Dad. What happened in the bus after the wedding made it 4. I ran out of the wrecker's yard faster than I'd ever run, even faster than I'd run after biting Mrs. Lecter at Mum's funeral. When I got home, I threw myself onto the bed. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop shaking. I could still see it there on the floor of the bus. Wormboy probably thought I'd screamed because of the slobberers. I hadn't. I'd screamed because of the shoe. It was under the driver's seat. I never noticed it there before, probably because I'd never faced the floor that close before. It was covered in dust and mildew, but I'd have recognized it anywhere. It was Mum's shoe. She was wearing it the day she died. Even after 5 years, you don't forget your mum's favorite bus driving shoes, especially when you used to spend so much time spitting on them and polishing them with a tea towel. It didn't look polished now. It looked twisted and scraped and sad, and it made me think of what Mum's body must have looked like when the police divers pulled her out of the river. That's why I had to get out of the bus. I yelled something and pushed past Rory, who was busy with his dopey worms, and jumped out and ran, all the way home. I told myself that the shoe wasn't real, that it was the stress I'd been under lately, the stress of a wedding and a new step family, and trying to push Rory through the metal floor of the bus. Stress could make you see things. I read it in a comic about an alcoholic astronaut. But when Rory got home, I was still shaking and still seeing that shoe. "Chicken," he said, clutching my Milo tin. "Scared of a few grubs? Pathetic." I should have gotten him in a necklock and grabbed my tin. I almost did, but I knew Mum wouldn't have approved. So instead, I took a few deep breaths and told him how, in my opinion, Tasmanian souvenir manufacturers who use worm-infested apples should be reported to the health authorities. Then Dad got home and yelled at me for a bit. "Children do not disrupt their parents' weddings," he shouted, "and they go to the reception whether they like it or not." Stuff like that. When he eventually calmed down, we talked. "I know it's not easy, this step-family lark," said Dad, "but I want you to give it a go. Okay, love?" I told him I would. We hugged each other. While Dad had his arms around me, I saw Rory watching from the doorway. As soon as our eyes met, he turned away. There was something about his expression that made me feel sorry for him. Just for a sec. Until I saw he was still clutching my Milo tin, and I remembered he's got a mum who's perfectly capable of hugging him, if she doesn't mind getting a bit of worm poo on her. Dad launched into making a lamb stew. Oh, lamb stew. Sorry, this is a very Australian book, and, you know, like, they know how to trigger Aussies. They do. Good lamb stew? Fucking oath. Alright. Dad launched into making lamb stew for him, and Eileen to take on their honeymoon camping trip. Dad launched into making lamb stew for him and Eileen to take on their honeymoon camping trip, and I helped him. I like cooking with Dad. Being a shearer, he's the best at peeling, so I get to use the cleaver. Once the stew was bubbling away, we went out onto the back veranda for a lemonade. I almost told Dad about the shoe, but I decided not to. No point in upsetting him, not on his wedding day. Dad spotted Rory sulking about the kitchen. "Hey, Roars!" he called. "Want a lemonade?" Rory jumped guiltily. He probably already had about 3 cans while we weren't looking. Then Eileen arrived with Gramps. "That was the best wedding I'd ever been to," said Gramps, as he reached into his pocket. "Anyone want a curried egg sandwich?" I was the only one who did. Then I helped Dad get to the camping things together while Eileen and Wormboy unpacked their moving cartons and got Rory's room set up. Assembled his bed, hung out all his little worm clothes in the wardrobe and that sort of stuff. Soon it was time for Dad and Eileen to go. I hugged Dad again, and Rory hugged his mum. Then there was the tricky bit. I took a deep breath and gave Eileen a quick squeeze. Luckily, I'm taller than her, so our faces didn't have to touch. Dad sort of half hugged, half patted Rory. Gramps kissed everyone. "Have you got the shovel?" Eileen asked. I sighed. It didn't seem very romantic. Most people went to Bali or Sydney or some other exotic place for their honeymoon, not camping on Bald Mountain where there weren't any dunnies. Oh well, I thought. It's what they both seemed to like. "Be good kids for Gramps," yelled Dad. "See you in 3 days." It felt strange watching Dad drive off with another woman. I mean, I'd seen him driving places with Eileen hundreds of times, but this was different because now we were stuck with each other and our lives would never be the same. The weird stuff started almost straight away. Gramps says, "Okay, kids, let's have lunch." And we had to remind him that it was dinner time. While he and Rory took a look in the freezer, I grabbed the opportunity to get my tin back. It was sitting on Rory's bedside table. I took the lid off and emptied that little ugly apple man onto the floor, its evil-looking eyes peering up at me. Then I heard a scratching sound. Another pair of eyes were watching me, from the top of the chest of drawers. Rory's mouse in a cage. I stuck my tongue out at both of them. Nah. Mum used to do her sewing and charity bookkeeping in that room, and nobody else had the right to invade it. Back in my room, I hid the tin in the bottom of my wardrobe, under an abseiling rope that Dad had given me for my birthday. "Don't say a word," I whispered to Finger, my goldfish. "There are invaders in the house, and we've got to be on guard." After dinner, while me and Gramps washed up, I took the chance. "Gramps," I said, "have you ever seen a shoe that you thought was there but wasn't actually?" Gramps thought about this. "Yeah, once," he said. "I didn't see a shoe that I thought wasn't there, but it actually was. Work boots, next to my veggie garden in front of the wheelbarrow. I tripped over it and squashed my sprouts." I decided not to continue with the conversation, partly because Gramps was chuckling so loudly and partly because Rory had stormed into the kitchen, red-faced. "You stupid idiot," he shouted. "You let them out of the tin. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "It's my tin," I said. "Tin?" said Gramps. "Oh, that's right, I squashed my tobacco tin, too." Rory rushed out and I finished the drying up. Stupid idiot yourself, I thought. They're only a bunch of worms. If you're that worried about them, train them to come when you whistle. Then I went to my room. As soon as I walked in, I could feel something was wrong. It took 2 seconds to spot it. Finger floating at the top of her tank. Heart pounding, I scooped her out and peered at her. I watched her gills. She was dead. It must have happened because she was still loose and floppy. Even as my eyes filled with tears, I felt rage eating into my gut. That vicious mongrel! Just because I let a few of his crummy worms escape, he kills my pet? Still holding Fingers, I head to the door. That mouse was dead meat. Rory appeared in the doorway. I decided to pound him first, then do the mouse. "You killed my..." I yelled, then stopped because he was yelling too. And he was holding something out. It looked like a small brown bag. I was confused. Why would a kid who just killed my fish tank think that I'd care that he found a bag to keep his dopey worms in? And that's when I realized it wasn't a bag. It was a mouse. Rory was sniffling and blinking. He was still angry, but I could tell he was upset as well. He's... Rory struggled to get the words out. He didn't need to. I could see what he was trying to say. The mouse was dead, and it didn't have any bones. Interesting. Yeah, sorry. Freaking content warning. I didn't realize that, you know, that was gonna that happened very quickly. Hey, look at us introduce these cute little lovable things. Gone. They're dead. It's like that Disney recap thing with Olaf from Frozen, where it's like they're retelling like all the old Disney stories, and it's like Mufasa's dead, and he's very dramatic about it. I used to love those. Those are really funny. But yeah, okay. Well, I don't think anyone needs to posit what happened here, but you know, like, yeah, the household is very tense, and they've done a good job building it up. I think what's really cool is they've put in the grandpa character, who helps cut through that tension really nicely too. I think if it was just them just at each other's throats the whole time, I think this book would just be very toxic, you know, like it's just these two toxic people, you know, doing toxic things to each other and feeling awful and negative emotions. But then you got this like sweet old grandpa with his like borderline senile input, and you know, I think it helped. I think it helped shoot out between the bit in the bus and that emotion to like, oh cool, grandpa's here, and you know, grandpa's kind of funny and quirky and stuff, and then now back to like this heavy stuff. What it shows is that there's a good understanding of like the timing of like all the different plot points here. So yeah, I'm digging this. I'm picking it up. I'm loving what I'm reading. But we are already on to chapter 4, which is great. By the way, this story is only 50 pages long. So you know, book 1 is only 50 pages long. And there are 6 books, so we will get through them. Probably not before Gen Con, but we will get through them. I promise you that. How many chapters are there? There are 8 chapters. So we're already we're approaching the halfway mark. So there you go. All right. Back to Rory's perspective. I stormed out of the kitchen. My head started to swim with red-hot anger. Dreadful dawn let my slobberers out. On purpose! And Mum and Jack had gone off on their honeymoon and left me in the camp of the enemy. I went back to my new bedroom, not nearly as good as my old one, and threw myself onto the bed. I silently hoped that their marriage would break up as quickly as possible. Stepfamilies suck. And that's what I thought. I hated Dawn for letting out my slobberers. She was so stupid. Gramps was the only decent one. Out of all of them, he was my favorite. He was certainly a lot better than Big Bad Dawn. Then I started to think about my dad. Remembering my dad was handsome. Mom used to say all the girls were after him because she was the one who got him. What I remember was his kind face. He was one of those people who always looked happy. He didn't have a mean bone in his body. Why'd he go? Why'd he go and leave me? I tried to push down the tears. Don't cry, don't cry. Be a man. I got up and went over to Nibbler's cage to get him. And have a bit of... to get him out and have a play. He wasn't running around his wheel like he usually does. He was inside his little wooden nest. I opened the lid and pulled him out. He was dead. And flat. And empty. He looked like a tiny possum that had been lying on the road for a couple of weeks, run over by thousands of cars. Nibbler was stiff and dry. His bones were gone, his innards were gone, his eyes were gone. He was nothing but a fat, flattened, dried-up skin. My little mouse, my friend. The only one in this house who would have listened. Gone. I blinked back my tears. Dawn, the scumbag, the murderer, she had it coming this time. I held the remains of Nibbler in my hand and ran out of my bedroom. She was standing there looking at me with hatred in her eyes. We both shouted the same thing at the same time. You killed my... And then we stopped, our mouths hanging open. She was holding her goldfish and crying. It was shriveled and horrible with no bones and no innards. I knew straight away that she hadn't killed Nibbler. She's awful, but she wouldn't kill her own goldfish. Someone else, something else had killed Nibbler and Fingers and sucked out their bones and innards. Dawn's eyes were growing rounder, and so did mine. What was going on? She pushed past me into my bedroom, and I turned and saw what she saw. My little apple man was still on the floor where she had thrown him. Slobbers wriggling all over him. They were wriggling out of my apple man at an incredible speed, 20 or 30 of them, flicking tongues, evil eyes, pulsing veins, leeches with tongues. That's what they reminded me of. They looked at us and reared up like snakes about to strike. My legs turned to jelly. I felt sick and scared. Why were they looking at us like that for? Were they hungry? If they were, they must have decided that we were a bit too big for them. They slithered out the window before Dawn and I could even take a breath. A large magpie sat on the lawn, pecking a piece of bread that Gramps had thrown there. It looked up with interest at the approaching slobberers and hopped towards them. Food! Well, the magpie was right. There was food. Him. Horrible. 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 The slobberers swarmed all over the poor bird. He gave one squawk and flew into the air just above our heads. The slobberers began to suck. Waving tongues, slurping mouths, all began to empty him out in front of our eyes. Without a sound, the bird and his slimy passengers plummeted to the grass, feathers fluttering down slowly. By the time the last feather had landed, the magpie was nothing but an empty, eyeless skin. The slobberers had grown after their meal. They were definitely swollen, but that didn't slow them down at all. Before either of us could say a word, they had wriggled across the lawn and disappeared under the floor of the garage. It was the most terrible sight I'd ever seen. The slobberers had eaten a magpie alive, gorging themselves like bloated maggots. I had to tell Dawn what I had done. Mum and Jack were in terrible danger. The words stuck in my throat, but I managed to get them out. Dawn, I said, I put some slobberers in their stew. Dawn turned on me, half in fury, half in terror. You put them in the stew? My dad's gonna eat that! So's my mum. I could hardly find my voice. You tried to stop them from getting married. I wanted to bust them up, you know, have a row over the worms. Then Mum and me could go back to our place and never have to see you and Jack again. You stupid idiot, Dawn yelled. Did you see what they just did to that bird? Dawn spun around and looked viciously at the apple man. She took a step towards him and grabbed my cricket bat. I knew what she was going to do, and I knew what I had already done. Putting them in Mum's stew. They were dangerous, and we had to get rid of them, but I wasn't going to let Dawn smash up the apple man. No way. Dawn lifted the back and then froze. So did I. There was one slobberer left. A long one. A very long one, and it slithered out of the apple man's left eye. On and on it seemed like an endless worm of rotting black toothpaste coming out of a tube. Dawn screamed and closed her eyes in horror. I couldn't stop looking at the terrible sight of the slobberer as it finally left the apple and started to coil and uncoil on the floor. What was it doing? It was writing. Yes, writing. It slowly formed its body into joined up letters that spelled out a single word. I will show you this word. That word is backwards. It's Carl. Let me see if I can flip my... Actually, my camera should be flipped. I don't know why it's flipped this way. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so let's try it again. Boom. So there it is. Carl. Ah! I shrieked. Dawn opened her eyes, but she had missed seeing the word. The slobberer was wriggling towards the window, as fast as it could go. Take that! Yelled Dawn as she hurled the bat at the slobberer, and it skidded across the floor, narrowly missing the horrible creature's tail. In a flash, the slobberer vanished out the window. Come on! Yelled Dawn. We have to get Dad and Eileen before they eat the stew. She scrambled out of the door, out of the house. I grabbed my apple man and shoved him into my pocket, then ran out after her. Gramps can help us, I panted. Dawn looked at me with contempt. Gramps can't even help himself, she said. She was right about that. Only an hour before, I'd seen Gramp put his electric drill in the freezer. He was definitely past it. We both looked around. In the garage was Mum's trail bike. As we ran towards it, I knew Dawn was filled with terrible thoughts about the slobberers and Jack and my mum and what might be happening up Bald Mountain. I was just as worried, but I also had another horror to cope with. The word that the slobberers had spelt, Carl, that terrible, wonderful word, was the name of my father. End of chapter 4. Alright, so, plot twists! Also, hi Matt, good to see you. We are reading the book that you can see over there, Wicked, by Paul Jennings and Morris Glisman, a pair of Aussie writers who wrote a lot of gross young adult novels back in the day, with a penchant for, I guess, horror and like that kind of like kids on bikes vibe. No, this one was good. This one was a wild bit. How am I feeling? Oh, I'm good. The reason I had to cancel this morning was because Pfeffer's one of my players, yeah, he was like bleeding out of his ears. He had done like he basically had done some mischief to his ear, and on his flight back the air pressure kind of exacerbated it, and so he was not in a good way, so we canceled today's stream. So that was unfortunate, but it is what it is, and I mean, you guys know me. I have all the love in my heart for my players, my friends who I come and do this stuff with. And if you guys do, please go and, offer Fef some support. We love Fef. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. So, I told him, like, hey, don't worry about it. Canceling shows is not a problem. And I know my audience, at least, are very much, like, understanding of this. Like, because, like, I mean, you guys are awesome. You guys know how I do things. I mean, I work for money, obviously, right? But I don't work at the expense of other people. That's just not my vibe. I don't want to do that. I don't want to sort of be like, oh, well, what are you doing not being on my game show? And, as much as I hate disappointing you guys, that's my priority is always to people being happy, healthy, safe. And that's always going to be my channel. Always. So, there you go. But, we are going to reschedule. We are going to find a time once Fef's feeling better to do our Dragon Kitchen episode and, yeah, have a lot of fun. So, but I'm in no rush. I just, like I said, today I just kind of got to that point where I've been like, man, I had to miss Friday, I had to miss Saturday, and now I'm missing the Sunday show. I was just like, no, I want to do a DAG Reads just to, see you guys. That's literally it. Honestly, it's like, I just missed hanging out with you guys on stream this weekend, and I wanted to do so. So here I am. Yep. Stop being so fucking corny, Michael. You fucking weirdo, you. How dare you have emotions? We're reading books from the fucking 90s. We don't have emotions when we're men. Yep. Nostalgia. The reason most of us do therapy. Have all the emotions, Dag. Thank you. All right. Shall we continue? Oh, also, if anyone has any questions during chat about the book and, what's happening and what's going on, let me know. The basic premise at the moment is two step siblings who have recently become acquainted with one another. Well, not acquainted, but who have recently gone into a family dynamic with one another. Dawn and Rory. Currently finding that these bone-sucking invertebrates, we'll just call them that, that have basically just started cannibalizing creatures, and Rory had put one in the stew, not realizing that they were so dangerous, that is being taken up a mountain by their parents for their honeymoon thing. So now they're on their way up the mountain to try and stop them from eating the worm, or worse still, having the worm eat them. So yeah. Yeah, that's true. I've seen that. I have. All right, chapter 5. Here we go. From Dawn's perspective, because this book switches between Dawn and Rory regularly. Stay calm, I said to myself as we as we sprinted to the garage. Don't panic. When you panic, your brain turns to a thick shake. It wasn't easy. Dad's overalls and Eileen's bike gear were hanging on the garage, saggy and empty, like sucked out skins. I forced myself to stop imagining things. Rory pushed me out of the way and leapt onto the trail bike. Wait, I said. It's too risky. Sergeant Wallace said if he sees you out on the street on that bike again, he'll use you as lawn fertilizer. Rory ignored me and kickstarted the engine. Okay, I yelled, seeing as we're going to end up at the police station anyway. Let's just go there now and get to them, to save Dad and Eileen. No, he shouted, no cops. He turned the engine off and slumped forward onto the handlebar. Rory glared at me. I felt sorry for him. When your mum is a courier and she's got as many unpaid speeding tickets as his mum, it doesn't leave you heaps of places to go in the event of an emergency. I had an idea. I grabbed Eileen's bike jacket off the wall and put it on, grabbed the helmets and threw Rory's to him. Shift back, I said. With this stuff on, people think I'm your mum. She's almost as big as me. I swung my leg over the bike and started it. Have you ridden a 54 before? Have you ridden a 250 before? Yelled Rory. Of course, I replied. My neck went cramped. This is a sign that she's lying, when her neck cramps. And I had a sudden urge for a curried egg sandwich. I couldn't understand it. Dad had let me go on a sheep bike once, but almost a 250. I jerked the bike into gear and we jolted out of the garage. Standing in the driveway watching us was Gramps. My guts sagged. I hit the brakes and hear Rory give a groan of despair through his helmet. Gramps stared at me. Eileen, he said. I thought you were on your honeymoon. I wanted to tear my helmet off and show Gramps it was me. Then I remembered Dad and Eileen and their stew full of slobbering parasites. The trouble with Gramps is if you start a conversation, he gets off track and ends up talking about woodwork. I revved the bike and we hurtled out of the driveway. In a cloud of dust and magpie feathers, halfway down the street, I felt Rory's helmet bang against mine. How long till we get to Bald Mountain? He shouted. About an hour, I yelled. A bit longer if you keep grabbing onto my shoulders and we crash and have to go to the hospital. Rory put his arms around my waist. It wasn't a great feeling, and at the time I'd probably preferred a slobberer. I told myself to grow up and stop being so squeamish, though. The trip went pretty well all the way down our street and around the corner past the library. But then we had to stop at a red light, and I felt Rory stiffen behind me. Relax, I said. We'll get there. Rory didn't relax. He gave a gasp. It's Dad, he said. Over there, Dad! He was pointing to a red car on the other side of the road. The windows were tinted. I couldn't see the driver too well, but he certainly looked like the photos I'd seen of Rory's dad. I blinked and peered, trying to see more clearly. Dad! Yelled Rory. The guy turned and stared at us, and suddenly, he didn't look anything like Rory's dad. Rory's dad's face was pretty ordinary, and this guy's face was all lopsided, and he had a mustache. I felt Rory sag behind me. I thought it was Dad, he mumbled. I could feel his heart thumping in my back. Poor kid, I thought. At least when your parents' dead, you know you'll never see them again. When one just nicks off, you're always hoping. Which made me think of my dad, and whether I'd see him again. When my eyes had stopped stinging, I noticed someone else was staring at us. The bloke in the grey car behind us. He was pretending not to, but I could see his beady eyes in the rearview mirror. It was Mr. Kinloch from the Wool Growers Association. He'd been to our place heaps of times because he and Dad both collected wool samples. Get ready for a chase, I muttered to Rory. I think he's recognized my socks. My guts clenched and Rory's arms tightened around my waist. I wondered if a bike could go faster than a car. Probably not when the person driving the bike didn't know how to get into fourth gear. The light turned green and I revved the bike as we screeched away. Once the front wheels were back on the ground and my heart was back in my chest, I glanced into the mirror. Mr. Kinloch was turning down Station Street. We headed out of town. Me hanging onto the handlebars, weak with relief, and Rory hanging onto me, muttering about the wear on his mother's tire. We didn't know it then, but we were about to get even more worn. It started when we went out to Bald Mountain, along the road. I just got the hang of fourth gear as we were rocketing along. Rory's helmets clacked against mine. Stop the bike, he shouted. Don't look down. His voice had the same faint, squeaky fear he used in the school play when he was a dying general. His acting hadn't been really good then either. "Stow it, pea-brain," I yelled, and carried on trying to find fifth gear. That's all I need, I thought. Wormboy playing his stupid tricks to get back for the wheelie in the... That's all I need, I thought. Wormboy playing stupid tricks to get his own back for the wheelie at the traffic lights. Has the cretin forgotten that this is an emergency? I found fifth. "Stop!" screamed Rory. He wasn't acting. Then I saw it, crawling out of the handlebars to where the stopper had fallen off. The biggest slobberer yet. It was the size of a human poo, and I could see its wet, veiny body pulsing, and its slimy tongue darting, and its green eyes glaring. I screamed and took my hand off the handlebar, and the bike wobbled and started to slow down. The slobberer slimed its way along the metal and flopped onto my jacket. I screamed again. The others were following it, slithering out of the handlebars and dropping onto me, crawling up my chest. I tried to knock them off. My bike gloves slapped against their slobbery rubber muscles, and they didn't budge. Their angry eyes just got bigger and glared up at me. It was like they noticed me for the very first time, and they started jabbing their tongues into my vinyl jacket. I almost fainted, waiting for them to suck me up dry like the magpie. Then I noticed that their tongues were stabbing into the vinyl, but not going all the way through. Filled with relief flooded through me. "Look out!" yelled Rory. I suddenly realized we weren't on the road anymore. Branches and leaves were whipping my face, and the bike was now airborne. We were through the scrubs and in the clear, crashing down, the bike on its side, skidding into a shower of dirt and twigs towards a huge sheet of metal. Wait, metal? No, water. I let go of the bike as I rolled painfully over the grass, tussock. Don't know what tussocks is. And dried sheep droppings and Rory's knees. I hear a loud splash. As soon as I stop rolling, I tear off the jacket and check every centimeter of it, shaking. Let me try that again. Whew, sorry. Just one of the things about reading is like when you get into like you kind of like build up this like tension in your throat. Always good to kind of deep breath, hydrate, do the whole thing. Hey, C-Sharp. G'day, mate. How you doing? Evening, matey potato. Hope you're doing well. Okay. As I rolled painfully over the grass tussocks and dry sheep droppings and Rory's knee, I hear a loud splash. As soon as I stopped rolling, I tore off the jacket. I checked every centimeter of it and my whole shaking body. Only then did I see that, like the slobberers, the bike had vanished. Just ripples on the surface of a large dam. "Great!" yelled Rory, his voice cracking. He had a cut on his face. "I will never save them. You're as hopeless as your mother." I was shaking so much that I could hardly get my hands into a fist. But I managed. And I'd have managed to pound him into his sneering mouth if it hadn't been for the sun glinting off something way down the hill, past the paddock and onto the ravine road. The windscreen of a car. A parked car. A yellow parked car with a blue door, which was the only one the wrecker had available after Mal Gleason backed us into the speedway. It was Dad's car. Getting down there took a while because we were both limping, and by the time we got close it was almost dusk. The car was half in shadow, and at first I couldn't see inside. All I could see was that the front door was wide open, and the engine was running. The bonnet was crumpled against a tree. Nothing seemed to be slithering over the car, not the outside anyway. "Dad!" I yelled. "Mum!" yelled Rory. No answer. Sobs wanted to come out of my throat. I didn't let them. Rory handed me a long stick. He was holding one too, like a spear. "Thanks," I said, grateful that even cretins have good ideas sometimes. We looked at each other, then crept towards the car. And inside the car was the most disgusting thing I'd ever seen. Splattered over the seats, floors, dashboards, and roof. Lamb stew. Holding our breath, we prodded a few lumps of meat and globs of soggy potatoes that dripped from the upholstery with our spears. No slobberers, and no Dad and Eileen. end of chapter 5. Good man, just vibing, getting to listen to some dude on the internet reading a book, I guess. Hell yeah. Some dude is right. That's what's on my badge. Dead Aussie Gamer. Professional dude. This is getting weird. Oh man, yeah, this entire thing, like, again, I said this at the start of the stream as well. Paul Jennings and Morris Glazeman, like, they are like the weirdest authors. They write some really gross, very interesting, very Australian literature from back in the day. And yeah, like, if you really want to see some weird stuff, watch some of those things like Lift Off or Round the Twist. A lot of that is inspired by these guys and their works from back then. Yeah. Like, I know some of the, like, there's, like, here. I'm gonna hold this up. If anyone likes to, please feel free to get that kinda. Feel free to take a screenshot. Any of these short books are a amazing read for sure. Any of those ones. And yeah, they all have that same kind of like weird, gross vibe and stuff. I remember reading like a ton of them, not all of them, mind you, but yeah, I wouldn't say he's my favorite author, but like he's definitely one I enjoy reading, which is why I wanted to read this one today. Reminds you of Goosebumps. Yeah, Goosebumps books were also amazing. I used to play the old Goosebumps game too. Didn't mind the movies, the one with Jack Black, but movies with Jack Black gotta be Jack Blackened, so you know. I don't know. I don't have anything against it. Just, you know, no, that's it. I just have nothing against it. It's fine. And things can be fine. I feel like we live in a society nowadays. Sorry, I'm just going to tangent here real quick. I think we live in a society where there's so much emphasis and onus on things being excellent. Like, everything you have to see has to be better than anything else you've ever seen and done. It's like, why can't shit just be fine? Elementals, the movie, you know, the new one with the fire and water, you know, like relationship couple thing, right? That movie was fine. I enjoyed it. Was it worth the ticket? Of course it was. It was a lot of fun. Was it the best Pixar movie I've ever seen? Of course not. And I think it gets a lot of gripe for that. And I'm just like, no, just enjoy the story. It's just a tale. It's a thing. It's for children. You know, this will be someone's Lion King, someone else's Lion King maybe. But you know, for you, it doesn't have to be something that changes your life every time you go to the movies. Anyway, that's my thought. Some people may agree. Some people may disagree. You know, I think another element to it is, like, I think cinemas kind of, because cinemas are technically dying out with the presence of like online streaming services and things like that. I think a lot of the ways cinema has just dropped the ball on like what the experience of going to the movies is all about. Right now, it's just kind of like the barest minimum. You go there, you buy snacks, you just go in and you watch your movie. But back in the day, they used to have like just tons of like little stalls and stuff. There used to be like almost like a fairground kind of feel to a cinema. Or, you know, like lots of different ways that you can do it. Ushers were ushers. They weren't just like teenagers working for minimum wage, shoveling pre-cooked popcorn into a bucket, you know? And then, to boot, you know, throw that in together, and a lot of the movies are just kind of these big Hollywood action moneymakers rather than things that really kind of make you want to be at the cinema, you know? Like A Quiet Place. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard of A Quiet Place. It's a movie in which monsters were drawn to noises and sounds, but the clever thing was that in that movie in particular, the sound director chose the soundscaping very specifically. There's actually none, if any, musical scoring to the background of that movie. It is actually quite a quiet soundscape. And so if you're watching the movie, it's like, oh yeah, this is very tense. This is very, you know, whatever, right? It's a great movie. But when you're in the cinema, when you're sitting with people, some people even eating popcorn or unwrapping candy or whatever, you know, those moments become even more tense. The cinema experience, you know, enhances that element of the movie. And, you know, that's what, you know, that's what I mean. Like, some movies really lean into the fact that this is something you want to see in the movies, you know. Yeah, the Spider-Man one's another one as well. That one, really big screen. Again, large screens also are a big part of it. The Star Wars movies, when the Destroyer is like flying over the screen and it just keeps going and going and going and going, you know, that is still a very, very core memory to a lot of people who have seen that in person, especially for the people who watched it for the first time in person as well, you know. Anyway, digressing. Yes, so going back to it, Paul Jennings, Morris Glisman are great authors who I find a lot of their books are enjoyable, for sure. So yeah. Great theater experience. Yeah. Across the Spider-Verse, I think, had a lot of really great, like even like both of the Spider-Man animated ones, you know, have just been amazing for the cinema. All right, let us go to chapter 6. Pulling a real dread right there. Yeah, that's true. It's because I have a lot to say about certain things, you know, like movies and stuff like that. That's kind of where I'm kind of at for things. I'm like, oh yeah, I like movies. I like things. All right. Chapter 6, from Rory's perspective. They must be dead, Mum and Jack. That's all I could think of when I saw the mangled car. I had to look in the car, but what would I find? Smashed and crushed bodies? I stared inside. Lamb stew was... Let's try it again. Stretching the tongue. Lamb stew was splattered everywhere, but there was blood on the seats. There was blood on the seats, but the car was empty. With trembling hands, I reached in through the driver's door and turned off the ignition. Frantically, Dawn and I started to search through the bushes. My legs didn't want to go, but I forced them forward. I didn't know what we were going to find. Could have been the most awful thing ever. Your worst nightmare. No, don't think about it. Put it out of your mind. Mum and Jack might be lying there under some bushes, scared but okay. Smiling, glad to see us. That's what I told myself anyway. That's what I hoped for. We ran from the bushes, shouting wildly, Mom! Dad! Mom! Dad! Mom! In the end, I didn't find my worst nightmare. I found my second worst. They were gone. Murderer! Screamed Dawn. You put those stinking worms in the stew. They must have come out, just like on the bike. And now what's happened? They've probably... Stop! I yelled. Stop! 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 I put my hands over my ears. I didn't want to hear the next bit. I was trying not to think about the sucked-out fish and my mouse and the magpie. They're still alive, I said, hoping so badly that I was right. How do you know? Dawn shrieked. My voice came out in a scratchy whisper. No skins? Dawn felt silent. Everything fell silent. In the surrounding bushes there were no sound. Not the croak of a frog or the call of a bird. Not the rub of a cricket leg. Not even the sound of leaves falling to the rocky ground. The whole forest was frozen in terror. We whispered, not knowing why. I'm going to the cops, said Dawn. No, I hissed. I think my dad's involved with this. What has he got to do with it, she said. That wasn't him back in town. I couldn't tell her about the worm spelling out Dad's name. I just couldn't, so I said nothing. Dawn and I faced each other in the silent twilight, until a sound. A far-off sound, soft, fearful whooshing, coming from somewhere to the left. A slushing, slurping noise, like a hose in reverse, sucking up water. A cold shiver ran over my skin as we stared at each other for a fraction of a second, and then, trying not to scream, we both started to scramble up to the road the way we had come. We reached the road and started to run downhill. If only a car would come. My bad leg slowed me down, and Dawn disappeared around the bend. She could run so much faster than me, even with her bruised leg. Why didn't she wait? Did she hate me that much? A sudden shriek filled the air. Oh no. I didn't want Dawn for a stepsister, but right then, in the middle of all that terror, she was 1,000,000 times better than no one. I rounded the corner and found her staring at a flat, dead skin on the road. A possum, Dawn yelled. Flattened by a car? I panicked hopefully. I wish, said Dawn. We crouched over the possum. It was still warm. No bones, no innards, not even blood. Slobberers. We stared down the road into the glowing darkness. They must be close, I gasped. Slurping, slushing, sucking was growing louder ahead of us and behind us. There's only one way to go, I yelled. Down here. I plunged down the road into the dense bushes. Dawn crashed behind me without saying a word. Maybe we would shake them off. Maybe they would rush past our trail down the road. That was the hope that filled my mind as the night began to fall. That was the hope that kept me going. Down, down, down. Clambering over logs, stumbling, bleeding from a grazed knee and elbow. Oh no, they hadn't rushed past. They hadn't been fooled. They were somewhere behind us now, not far back in the darkness. Loose, wet tongues slithering in every crack and crevice, following our trail like boneless bloodhounds, dragging their hungry bellies over the ground. Fear. Fear was numbing inside me like a lump of ice. I could tell by the growing noises of the slurps that the slobberers were getting closer. There were so many to think about, so many questions. But one of them, the only one that really mattered at this moment was how we were going to escape. We ran and jumped and fell, but all the time in the gum trees, somewhere behind, was always within earshot. They're going to catch us, said Dawn. She grasped her spear tightly. We have to fight them. Don't be mad, I said. Wrong word. Don't be mad. You saw them suck out that possum. How would you like... In the moonlight, I saw her face crumple, and I stopped in mid-sentence. Maybe they won't attack in the night, she said. I gave a snort. I don't think so. Look! Not far behind, dozens of glowing green specks blinked back through the trees. Eyes. Eyes that were seeking us out. The slobberers could see in the dark. I was sure of it. We crashed onwards in a blind panic. My sides ached and my legs hurt badly. Ever since Dawn's mom had driven me and the bus into the river, I couldn't walk or run properly. My knee was killing me. But it wasn't far to the bottom of the gully, and I had a plan. Desperate, but it might work. Dawn was stronger. Dawn was bigger. Dawn was faster, but I was smarter. That's what I always thought at the time anyway. There, I said, bursting out of the trees. The river. We must be close to the Wilson Jetty. We stumbled along the riverbank, and sure enough, there it was. A small dinghy tied up to the tree. With not so much as a word, to each other, we jumped in. Dawn untied the rope without even being asked, and I pushed us into the center of the stream. The bank was just dark shadows, not even a glimmer from the moonlight. But through the gloom, it was not hard to see our nightmares. Glowing green eyes, dozens of them, staring out into the river from the receding bank. The current was strong, and we drifted downstream quickly. The eyes blinked, growing smaller as we moved away. Soon there were only little pinpricks, like a bank of unfriendly glowworms in the dark. Relief flooded through me. We were leaving the slobberers behind. You know what? I screamed into the night. You guys suck! I laughed hoarsely. Dawn started to laugh with me. Hysterical laughter. At that moment, the eyes went out. Yes, I swear it was the exact moment we laughed, as if someone had simply thrown the switch. We'll call the cops, said Dawn. They'll get an army. They'll wipe them out with flamethrowers or snail killers or something. This time I said nothing about Dad and the cops. We were safe for now, but I had a feeling that the slobberers, or the Apple Man, had some other nameless thing that was not going to let anyone We were safe for now, but I had a feeling that the slobberers, or the Apple Man, or some other nameless thing was not going to let us tell anyone. I wondered what lay ahead, waiting in the dark. They might be able to swim, I said. Then why didn't they jump in the river after us? Maybe they're going to cut us off somewhere else. We both shuddered. There must be somewhere we can hide, I said. The water will be covering our trail. Dawn didn't answer. She was funny like that. Sometimes it was really hard to know what was going on in her weird mind. She was probably thinking everything was my fault. As we drifted silently in the darkness, my thoughts turned to Dad. He gave me the Apple Man. Was Dad behind all of this? Was he a crook? Why did he and Mum bust up? Just because he had gone off and he didn't mean... just because he'd gone off didn't mean he stopped loving me. Did it? I didn't care. I loved him. He was still my dad no matter what he might have done. He couldn't have sent the slobberers, not to suck out his own son. Dad's face floated in my mind. He was kind. A laughing face. The one that watched me so proudly when I rode my dirt bike. The one who always called me mate and told me weird jokes. I missed him. I thought about how Mum had taken all of Dad's photos out of the family album. She said she didn't want to hurt Jack's feelings, but what about mine? All I had to remind me of Dad was my little Apple Man in my pocket, and the slobberers. Had they been a part of Dad's present? Nah, they couldn't be. They killed animals. They were dangerous. Why had Dad gone? Why had Dad gone? Just leaving me and Mum. I didn't even have her to myself. She'd fallen in love with Jack, and then I really only had half a Mum. And now I have no Mum at all. She was gone. Dead for all I knew. Unless I could find her. And how could I do that? I was only a boy. I cried silently and hoped that Dawn couldn't see my tears in the night. Alright. We have 2 chapters remaining for this book. How are we finding it so far? Having fun? We're enjoying the wacky, gross, terrifying thing that is, of course, the great and brilliant minds of Paul Jennings and Morris Gleesman. Sad and scary and rad. Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I think it is quite awesome. Young adult books are treasures, honestly. Like, I mean, I do like a couple of, like, bigger books and stuff like that. And there is a saga I've recently come into that I'm interested in reading. Maybe after Gen Con. But yeah. Can't say I'm particularly listening, but there are some odd sounding things in there, though. Yeah, fair. Hey, look, I appreciate you being here, no matter what. If you have any questions about the story or what's going on, feel free to ask. Always happy to answer questions. What's the saga? I'll leave it as a surprise. Mostly because I don't want to set up expectations that I'll have to read that saga. But yes, it's not Percy Jackson. Though I should read Percy Jackson's, honestly. Votaria, you like it? Nice. That's good to hear. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad. You know, like, I mean, I do the DAG Reads because it's more of, like I said, it's an opportunity to get to, like, you know, chill out with you guys, you know, chat, find out about how you guys are doing. And again, like I said, if you guys want to throw out any topics or things, pardon me, that you want to talk about, you know, while we're between chapters, super keen for that. Always about that. So, yeah. There you go. Okay. Let us continue. Chapter 7 from Dawn's perspective, I believe. Let me just double check. Yes. Okay. I cried silently and hoped that Rory couldn't see my tears in the night. Oh, Dad, please. Not you two. If Dad was dead, then there was just me. Well, as good as. I tried to imagine my life with Gramps and Wormboy. One person who didn't know which planet I was on and the other one who didn't care. I stared at the black water swirling around the little boat. Another awful thought wormed into my guts. Perhaps we were cursed. A horrible family curse that Mum and Dad didn't know anything about. Perhaps one of our ancestors did something bad, and as a result, 2 wonderful people had to die in the prime of their life, with all their teeth, and hardly any wrinkles. With sparkling eyes that could spot me pinching a biscuit from 100 meters, I made myself stop. Don't give up. That was Dad's motto. In my head, I could hear him. Don't give up till you search the back paddock. It was an old farmer saying that he used when a mob of sheep or a can opener went missing. Don't worry, Dad, I said silently. I'll find you, even if I have to search every back paddock. Even if I have to find. Let's try that again. Ha! I'll find you, even if I have to search every back paddock in Australia. Ah! Wormboy was yelling. Our boat was drifting close to the riverbank. Overhanging branches were nearly taking our heads off. Push! He shouted. We rammed the oars into the roots and heaved ourselves back out into the main current. Rory peered anxiously into the dark trees. That was close, he panted. We're lucky we didn't end up with a boat full of slobberers. He looked so small and frail and anxious sitting there. Eyes big in the moonlight. Suddenly I wanted to make him feel better. Don't be a dope, I said. We're miles downstream. Slobberers can't travel that fast. Oh, how I was wrong. How very dead wrong. Hey, welcome in, Afon. Mwah. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your 24 months of Prime subscription. You know what that means? It means this is your Twitch anniversary, your second year Twitch anniversary. Thank you so much for all of your support. I just want to take a moment. Just take a moment real quick. We'll put a pin in this. Afon, I have known you for a long while, and, you know, there are people who I think have supported me in so many meaningful ways over time. And I want to say that getting to see you in chat, getting to see you like kind of support me over and over again has always been an absolute like uplifting thing, because, you know, I always worry about my content. I always worry that people aren't going to like it. I always worry about, like, you know, it's like, oh, you know, I don't have, like, you know, big numbers of people in my chat. And I'm okay with that. And the reason I'm okay with that is because the people who I find are in my chat are people who are like me, who feel the same way I feel about creative writing, about books, about D&D, about role-playing, about all the sort of the cool stuff. And to know that you've been here for 2 years is of immense value to me. So thank you for thank you for a second year of your support on my channel. And I look forward to seeing a 36-month streak at some point or another. Okay. So, don't be a dope, I said. We're miles downstream. Slobberers can't travel that fast. Oh, how wrong I was. How very dead wrong. Even as I was pretending to roll my eyes at Wormboy's dopiness, I saw the green specks of light overhead. Not in the trees, in the black skies. I must have gasped. Rory saw them too. We stared up, gripping the sides of the boat. They're just stars, I said. They just look green because of atmospheric conditions. I wanted to believe it, but my neck was killing me, and I would have crawled into a sheep's poo for a curried egg sandwich. Signs when she's lying, she gets these cravings. They're moving, croaked Rory. I think they're watching us. As if, I said. Slobberers can't fly. Wrong again. Something splashed into the water. I gripped my oar as hard as my shaking hands would let me, ready to make Slobberers schnitzel, but it wasn't a green-eyed slug floating next to the boat. It was a fruit bat. I turned it over with my oar. It was a big, dead fruit bat without a bone or blood vessel in its flat, floppy carcass. We stared at it, and more splashes further down the river. Suddenly, I heard wings beating overhead, and I realized what was going on. The slobberers are flying in on bats, I yelled, and sucking them dry when they want to come down. We looked at each other and peered frantically into the black water, and there they were, slimy torpedoes with green eyes, speeding away from us. Why aren't they attacking? Said Rory. I don't know. They must have another plan. Up ahead, more splashes. Rory groaned. There's a bridge before we reach town. So, I said. So have you ever seen a spider drop off a roof? My gut clenched. We rounded a bend in the distance. Friendly streetlights. I went weak with relief, and then I saw it, spanning the river ahead, an arc of green lights. A miniature Sydney Harbour bridge at night. "Row!" screamed Rory. "Row for the banks!" We thrashed the water with our oars. When the boat rammed into the bank, we leapt out, slipping on the mug and grabbing a tree trunk. The tree trunk supported the canopy of dark branches and an army of green eyes. "Run!" yelled Rory. "Where to?" I shouted as we plowed through the dry grass. Behind us, we could hear the horrible thud, thud, thud of soft things hitting the ground. "Dunno," Rory shouted. "Yes, I do." He veered to our left, towards Dead Cow Clearing. "The bus! The slobberers are terrified of the bus!" I knew how they felt. For several hours, I'd been feeling sick every time I thought about Mum's shoe on the bus. I kept having crazy thoughts. Drunk people lost their shoe. Mad people. What if things people said about Mum about Mum in the accident were true as well? Now, as the jagged iron fence of the wrecker's yard loomed out in the darkness, I knew I couldn't get back on the bus. "Not the bus," I pleaded. "Somewhere else." "There isn't anywhere else," yelled Rory, wide-eyed and frantic. "There's a caretaker at night," I said. He might have a gun." "He's even older than Grandpa. If he thinks we're burglars, he'll blow our heads off." We reached the fence. I glanced back at the moonlight in the paddock. The green eyes were still coming. Slimy bodies hissed over the dry, long grass. Tongues slobbered. I froze. They were getting bigger. I stared, terror thudding in my head, and at their swollen bodies. "Okay," I whispered desperately. "The bus." I hurried along the fence, with Rory close behind. I tried not to look at the bus, at the standing wreckage, and the rustling in the yard. We reached my secret entrance. "Hurry," Rory said. "They're getting closer." I couldn't hurry. I couldn't even move now. The fence in the hole was gone. Someone had nailed a sheet of iron over it. There was no way in. End of chapter 7. On to the final chapter. You're welcome. Over the last few months, due to working schedule, living halfway around the world, I can only support you through subscription. Hey, Fawn, listen. You know what I'm like. First of all, thank you so much. And that is still so meaningful. But, again, I'm not here for, donations. I'm not here for that, stuff, kind of thing. I am here because I love being here. And, like I said, getting to know people has always been my true pleasure. The fact that you have been offering your support like that, is already so much. So thank you. And again, thank you to everyone in chat who has supported my channel. Whether you're a subscriber through regular or through Prime, whether you are someone who donates regularly to my various goals that I try to achieve, or even people who just are in my chat earning channel points, or even people who, again, voted for me for the award. There are so many reasons for me to be thankful for you guys, and there is never a not enough when it comes to you guys being here. That's the truth behind it. So yeah, that's it. Enough sappy stuff. One final chapter, and then we are done for the evening. But guys, if you haven't done so already, type in !vote. Go to the link because you can vote for DAG to be the world's best Pathfinder GM. It's not a small title. The voting closes in 2 hours. So there you go. Voting closes in 2 hours. I'm a good bean. Thank you. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Okay. Chapter 8. I'm feeling tense. This is quite a good starting to the 6-part book. So, all right. There was no way into the wrecker's yard. The fence was just too high. Sorry, this is Rory, by the way. Dawn and I searched around for something. Anything that might get us over the top. I shouted. Just the thing. A big oil drum. I roiled it over to the fence and stood upon its end. You first, I managed to gasp. They're coming. They were coming. The slobberers were coming. And they were bigger than ever. Maybe the darkness would hide us. Maybe they would lose our trail. Maybe their horrible, horrible tongues wouldn't pick up on our scent. Maybe the top of the fence had been cut to form sharp points. Dawn scrambled onto the drum and pulled her sleeve of her jumper down over her hands, then hoisted herself over the razor points in one bound one. I heard her land on the other side. How did she even do that? She was so fit. I couldn't even get up onto the oil drum. It rocked from side to side every time I tried to haul myself up. Someone help! Someone come, anyone! Rory, hurry up! Dawn's urgent whisper seemed like thunder in my ears. Shh, I said, they'll hear you. Finally, I managed to get on the drum. I knelt there on my knocking knees, the drum trembling, threatening to upend itself and throw me hard onto the ground. Carefully, I rose to my feet, pulled down my sleeves over my fingers, and gingerly felt the sharp edges of the iron fence. The drum skidded from beneath me, leaving me dangling by my hands. The steel point of the fence cut through my sweater, scraping the skin off my fingers. I hauled myself up, felt the jagged points tear upon my legs. Blood spilled down the fence in a sticky trail. I dropped to the ground inside the wrecker yard. A bloody bundle of terror eagle spread on the oily ground. I groaned in pain as I saw Dawn run over to the bus. Over his little office, the caretaker looked up and scowled. I could see his face growing dimly in the light of the lamp desk. His dog was curled up by the door. It gave a low growl as it lifted up its head. My finger, I groaned. I held up my cut hand and stared in horror at the blood pouring down my arm. The pain was terrible. I looked down at my knee. Something inside me seemed to die. Suddenly I didn't care anymore. I was like a wounded soldier wanting to be put out of his misery by a friend's bullet. This was all too much. The running, the pain, the terror. Let them come. Let them come. I didn't care anymore. Maybe I was slipping into unconsciousness just like after the bus crash. But then I felt something soft and smooth wipe the blood from my left hand, like a nurse gently wiping a patient's blood. For a second, I couldn't take it in. A long, wet, veined tongue sliding through the hole of the iron fence as it slithered over my injured finger, licking up the blood. A slobberer's tongue. A horrible blue tongue that was feasting, slurping slime over me. It slid up and touched my face. I froze and I couldn't move. On the other side of the fence, I heard horrible gobbling squeals as the other monsters fought over the bloody trail I had left behind. I tore my hand away and fled after Dawn towards the bus. I snatched a glance over my shoulder. Hideous slobbering tongues like tendrils of a monstrous sea anemone were waving atop the fence. Some were pausing at the sharp points. Some were even licking patches of blood on the spikes. Roof, roof, roof. The caretaker's dog had sensed us. He stood barking, staring into the gloom. Dawn had reached the bus. Rory, she called. I can't go back in there. You have to, I yelled. Dawn looked over her shoulder. The dog charged towards her, its lips pulled back over its terrible teeth, growling, howling as it leapt. With a scream, Dawn ran into the darkness. But the dog wasn't after her. It hurled itself at the gate, springing up furiously at the blue-veined, slithering tongues of the slobberers. I started up and stepped, mumbled. That's not right. I started up the step and stumbled. There was something there, something alive, wedged on the step, blocking the door. A sheep! A stupid sheep! I grabbed it wildly and pulled. My cut finger went right up its nose. Oh, yuck, yuck, yuck! As I wrestled with the sheep, the caretaker ran out to see what the barking was about. His pot belly jiggled up and down as he lurched across the compound. I stared out from the steps. The moon shone on my face. The caretaker stared right at me and carried on. He must have seen me, but ran right past. I couldn't see Dawn anymore. The sheep gave one loud meh and scampered off into the night. Suddenly, the gates fell, and an army of enormous slobberers poured into the yard. The first slobberer lunged forward and closed its mouth over the dog's jaw. It shoved its tongue straight down the poor animal's throat. There was a horrible sucking noise, the sound a bath makes when the last bits of water drain out, and the dog collapsed, boneless, on the wet ground. It shook for a moment, still alive, a furry handbag of jelly, its legs no more than quivering rope. The dog's eyes rolled for a second, then closed. There was a gurgle, and it laid still. I gave a shudder for the dog's sake. I gave a shudder. For the dog's sake, I hope it was dead. The caretaker fled, howling into the night. Most of the slubberers ignored him. They had other prey. It was me they wanted. But one big grey brute turned and rumbled after the caretaker. It looked like a seal galloping forward in battle. In the darkness, there was a yell, then silence. The other slubberers then surged in my direction, fighting with their tongues for the red drops I had left behind me. They tasted the trail and followed. Was there anything that could help me? Anything at all? The only thing I had with me was the apple man, squashed down in my pocket. With a bleeding finger, I pulled him out and stared at him. My head swam. It felt as if it was filled with a million bees. I scrambled onto the bus and collapsed. I was alone, and outside, somewhere in the darkness, I heard a girl scream. And that is the end of book 1, entitled The Slobberers. And once again, there's the artwork for the cover. The Slobberers. Obviously, it does continue in the other chapters and the other books and stuff. And, you know, the next book is called Battering Rams, which we will read next time we're doing a DAG Reads. Of course, like with every good book that we have been working on, when we get to the end of a section, we rely on our good old dragon Meatloaf to keep our place in the book so that we can come back to it. There you go. So that was book 1 of the Wicked series. Great cliffhanger. Absolutely great cliffhanger. Honestly, I can't remember if the publication came staggered, or if it came all out as one big piece. I know there were different books, so I presumed that they came out at different times, or maybe, you know, I don't know. But yeah, no, that was intense, to say the least. But yeah, how do you guys find the book? Is it a story you want to keep listening to or reading, or want me reading, you know, or is it like, it's kind of gross and icky, you know? Let me know in chat. As for me, obviously it is now that period of time, so we're gonna go and find someone that is out and about that we can go and raid into. Here we go. Then we'll read some comments and call it a night. Let's see. Got some D&D folks doing stuff. Ooh, the Hype Goblin is playing some Pathfinder, so we might go raid over with the Hype Goblin. So there we go. There we go, brilliant. Yeah, so they're about to start, so that's actually a good time to pop in with these guys. All right, let's have a read of some comments here in the chat. Nice, love a good hit cliffhanger. Yes, me too. It was fun. Thanks for reading. Yes, Batari, can we start the next one now? Would love to, but unfortunately, late 'tis the hour, and I have to be fresh as a daisy for tomorrow's Pathfinder game. So yeah, be sure to, you know, if you haven't followed the channel already, which I'm sure many of you already have, then, you know, hey, I'm Desi Gamer, this is my place, this is my face. We mostly run TTRPGs. Sundays we do just a very casual hangout DAG Reads thing when we can, though that is currently on hiatus, so can't guarantee that we'll be back next week. Like I said, most of this is just kind of pre-prep for Gen Con that's coming up. So I'll be at Gen Con, I'll be doing a lot of live streaming while I'm there, meeting up with a ton of like content creators and stuff. So yeah, you know, look forward to all those cool things as they come up. And if you haven't done so already, guys, then hey, also the vote for DAG. DAG might be winning an award for best Paizo GM at Gen Con. So if you guys do this, I'll take photos of me with my certificate in my flashy freaking award ceremony suit, so you'll actually see me in something other than, you know, the Dead Aussie Gamer thing. So there's that as a special treat. And yeah, stuff to look forward to. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Michael. I'm the Drowsy Gamer. This has been absolutely wonderful. Guys, stay safe, stay wonderful, be kind to each other because hell, it's free and it's worth doing. Stay safe, and until we meet again, as always, from me to you, game hard or die trying. Good night, folks. Bye!